You think your boss is a tyrant for scheduling a meeting during your lunch break? Or maybe you think that one reality TV star throwing a glass of wine is the peak of drama. That's amateur hour. You haven't met the women who wrote the textbook on being unhinged. Welcome to history's baddest queens, the ultimate rogues gallery. We're diving deep into the tales of 7 royal women who heard the phrase power corrupts and said,
"Hold my poison goblet."
These aren't your fairy tale queens waiting for a prince. These are the queens who became the dragon. From mothers who saw their sons as competition to saints who weaponized birds. This is a tour through the most toxic royal court you can imagine. So, buckle up, make sure your will is updated, and let's get started. First up, let's travel back to 6th century France. Meet Fredegund. She didn't just break the glass ceiling, she shattered it, used the shards to stab her rivals, and then hastily glued the pieces into a jagged, uncomfortable-looking throne. Fredegund started her career as a humble palace servant. But she had ambition. And in the 6th century, the fastest way up the corporate ladder was to catch the CEO's eye. The CEO, in this case, was King Chilperic I. Through some aggressive networking, she went from servant to the king's mistress. There was just one problem. The king already had a queen, Galswintha. For Fredegund, this was just a minor HR issue. One morning, Galswintha was found mysteriously strangled in her bed. The king, clearly heartbroken, decided the best way to mourn was to immediately marry Fredegund. Problem solved. But this promotion created a new rival. Galswintha's sister, Brunhilde, who was also a queen in a neighboring kingdom. This kicked off a 40-year all-out war between the two women that made the Hatfields and McCoys look like a friendly neighborhood dispute. It was the original Real Housewives feud, but with more assassinations and less Botox. Fredegund's ruthlessness wasn't just for outsiders, though. She was an equal opportunity psychopath. When her own daughter Riginth annoyed her by boasting about her inheritance, Fredegund took her to the treasury. "Look at all this beautiful treasure, darling," she said, opening a massive, heavy chest. "Just lean in and pick whatever you like." As her daughter leaned over, Fredegund slammed the lid down on her neck, attempting to decapitate her with a chest full of gold. Servants had to pull her off. Talk about a toxic family heirloom.
Hey, best to get out during the mom-daughter bonding activity challenge.
If Fredegund climbed the corporate ladder, then Empress Wu Zetian of China built the entire corporation, fired everyone, and then named herself CEO for life. In over 4,000 years of Chinese history, she was the only woman to ever rule as emperor in her own right. And her path to the top was paved with the bodies of her enemies and her family. She started in the 14th tier of the emperor's concubines, basically an unpaid intern in the palace. But through sheer intellect and political maneuvering, she caught the eye of the heir, Gaozong. Her big break came when she gave birth to a daughter. The reigning Empress Wang, who was childless, came to visit the baby. Shortly after she left, the baby was found dead, suffocated. Wu Zetian, in a grief-stricken rage, accused Empress Wang of the murder. The emperor, heartbroken and manipulated, believed her. Wang was deposed and Wu took her place as empress. Historians whisper that Wu killed her own child just to frame her rival. That wasn't a power move, that was the most twisted HR complaint in history. Once she was empress, she didn't stop. She established a brutal secret police force to sniff out any potential opposition. Anyone who even looked at her funny was accused of treason and either executed or exiled. This included her own family. She exiled her sons, forced her grandchildren to commit suicide, and eliminated entire branches of her family tree. She didn't just clean house, she fumigated it. Ultimately, she ruled for decades, a master of fear and strategy. She proved a woman could rule China, but her management style was, let's say, a little intense. Now, for a woman who proves you can be both a saint and a serial killer, meet Olga of Kiev, a 10th century ruler from what is now Ukraine. The Orthodox Church canonized her as a saint, but before she got her halo, she went on one of the most brutal, creative, and downright cinematic revenge sprees in all of history. It all started when her husband, Igor of Kiev, was brutally murdered by a tribe called the Drevlians. The Drevlians then had the audacity to send 20 of their best men to propose that Olga marry their prince. Olga greeted them with a smile. "I welcome your proposal," she said. "Please, rest in your boat, and my men will carry you to my court tomorrow in a great honor." The next day, her men carried the boat with the Drevlians inside and dropped them into a deep ditch they had dug overnight. They were buried alive. She then sent a message back. "Send your most distinguished men so I may come to your prince with due honor." The Drevlians, apparently not great at reading a room, sent another delegation of their nobles. Olga welcomed them and said, "Please, cleanse yourselves in my bathhouse after your long journey." Once they were inside, she locked the doors and burned the entire building to the ground. Still not done, she traveled to the Drevlian capital to hold a funeral feast for her husband. She encouraged the Drevlians to drink heavily. Once 5,000 of them were blackout drunk, her soldiers moved in and slaughtered every single one. For the grand finale, she laid siege to their capital city. After a year, she offered them peace. "Just give me 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from each house as a tribute," she said. The starving Drevlians agreed. Olga then had her soldiers tie a piece of sulfur-laced cloth to each bird's leg, lit them on fire, and released them. The birds flew back to their nests in the wooden city, setting the entire place ablaze. Anyone who fled the fire was captured or killed. And after all that, she became the first Rus ruler to convert to Christianity and was subsequently canonized as a saint by the Orthodox Church. Apparently, the church had a very forgiving definition of pious. Some queens were personally cruel. Isabella of Castile, she made cruelty a national policy. You might know her as the woman who funded Christopher Columbus's fun little sailing trip. But back home in Spain, she was running a very different kind of enterprise, the Spanish Inquisition. Isabella was a hardcore Catholic fundamentalist, and she and her husband Ferdinand decided Spain needed a rebranding. Their goal was one nation, one monarchy, one faith. This was terrible news for the hundreds of thousands of Jews and Muslims living in Spain. She launched the Spanish Inquisition, which was less of a court and more of a state-sponsored terror campaign. Its job was to purify Spain. Citizens were forced to convert to Catholicism or be exiled. If you converted but were suspected of practicing your old faith in secret, you were brought before the Inquisition. And you did not want to be brought before the Inquisition. They were masters of torture, using methods designed to extract a confession by any means necessary. If you were found guilty, your punishment was often a public execution called an auto de fe, where you were burned at the stake. It was a horrifying spectacle designed to terrorize the population into submission. So while she was sending Columbus off to discover a new world, she was systematically destroying the multicultural worlds that had existed in Spain for centuries. It's a chilling reminder that some of history's greatest horrors weren't committed by maniacs in a fit of rage, but by pious leaders with a clear, terrifying vision. If you think your mom is overbearing, meet Irene of Athens, the 8th century Byzantine empress who redefined the term toxic mother-son relationship. Irene became regent for her 9-year-old son Constantine VI after her husband died, and she discovered something she really liked being in charge: She wasn't just keeping the throne warm for her son, she was getting it custom fitted. She put her own face on coins, signed documents with her own name, and basically acted like the sole ruler. When Constantine turned 16, the age he was supposed to take full power, Irene was not having it. She wasn't ready to give up her corner office. The relationship soured. Constantine, now a young man, tried to break free from her control and gather his own supporters. This was a huge mistake. Irene didn't just ground him, she orchestrated a coup against her own child. She had him arrested, accused him of being an enemy of the state, and then, in an act of unimaginable cruelty, she had his eyes gouged out. And to add a final twisted flourish, she ordered it to be done in the purple chamber of the palace, the very room where he had been born. She ensured he could never rule, because he could never see. With her son blinded and deposed, Irene took the throne and declared herself Basileus, or emperor, not empress. She didn't just want to be a powerful woman, she wanted to be the man. Dr. Phil would have had a field day with this family. So there you have it. From eye-gouging mothers to pigeon-bombing saints and queens who ran their country like a death cult, these women weren't just sitting on a throne. They were playing a game of chess where the pieces were human lives. And they were more than willing to sacrifice a few pawns, or bishops, or their own children. It makes you wonder, were they truly evil, or just expert players in the brutal, high-stakes game of royalty? Which queen do you think was the most unhinged? Drop a name in the comments below and let the debate begin. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more unhinged history. We'll see you next time.